All right, everyone. Happy Wednesday. You already know what time it is. It is time for our live leadership chats every Wednesday, every Friday, right at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We go through a real case study with a real leader, real life experiences, real solutions right here on our live leadership chat. So today I'm super excited. We have founder and CEO of Milwaukee Excellence Charter Schools, Maurice Thomas, who, by the way, I'm just going to bring him on the screen here. Thank you for joining us today, Maurice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And he has done some incredible work in Milwaukee. His school was recognized out of the entire state, one of the two top Title I schools in the entire state. And that, congratulations to you. That is obviously a reflection of your hard work, of the hard work of your teachers, your leadership team, and your students and parents and your entire community. So thank you so much, Maurice, again, for blessing us with your presence. So before we start, we always like to begin. By the way, if you didn't hear the hype song, you can go back and rewind this later. Power Kanye by Kanye West. Such a good hype song to have. How did that song come to be
I
for
don't know.
you?
I think when that album came out, was it My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy? Was that like November of like 2010, 2011? And I don't know. That song, it just speaks to, I don't know, being a black man, being a leader, making sure that you are able to handle your business. And this was before, Kanye started running for office and doing all sorts of other stuff that we won't get into. But it was back
Right.
when Kanye was still, Kanye. So
When Kanye was so Kanye. Love it, love it, love it. So, a few cool facts that we want to go through. So, if you don't know, we always like to do this for the leaders that come on because it's really important that our community is also able to just see us behind the hats and the titles and suited and booted. We're real people, right? That go through real life experiences. And so, Maurice has two daughters, two
yeah.
precious daughters. How old are they, Maurice?
So my oldest, Reese, she's 5, and Marley is 19 months.
Wow, it's crazy. Time flies.
Yeah.
So I thought this one was interesting. A high school wrestler, and most people think that that is hilarious.
Yes. So yeah, I wrestled in high school. It's an extreme sport. You versus another person, 1-on-1 for 6 minutes. It's really tough. It's really grueling. You have to lose a lot of weight, and it's just when you wear the uniform, it's called a singlet. And so I used to get my boys used to rip me a lot for the little tight. You know what I'm talking about? Little suit with the sport. Yeah.
Yes. I bet. I'm sure, I remember when I was in high school, that was like the big thing too. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys are wearing that. And so I'm
Yeah.
sure that was its own experience within itself. And then this next cool fact where you've had a beard since 13 years old
Yeah.
and and your students actually confuse you for
James Harden.
James Harden.
So
And go ahead, tell us a little bit more about that. How's that experience been for you?
yeah, so like, yeah, I've had the beard since I was 13, and it's weird because James Harden, he's number 13. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, and so when you're wrestling, actually can't have a beard. So I've just been shaving it, and it probably wasn't until I don't know when I became a teacher that I started to grow it out and let it just do its own thing. As you can see, it's doing its own thing in this pandemic right now because I can't go and get it done. But no, one day I had a student, and bless her heart, she's a sixth grader, but she came to school one day after the Bucks had played the Rockets back when James was with the Rockets, and she goes, "Mr. Thomas, I saw you last night." I was like, "Where'd you see me?" I was like, "Where'd you see me?" She was like, "You were on TV. You play basketball, don't you?"
Serious.
I swear, I started cracking up. I was like, "Yeah, girl, that wasn't me," but I'm still here teaching y'all. So I just kind
Oh
of
my
a
gosh.
little bit. She soon realized it wasn't actually me, but
That is hilarious. Oh yay! By the way, I'm learning how to like do little sound effects too.
oh, I love it.
That was my shameless attempt at
Drop one of the coolest bombs for me.
one of the cool bombs. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like the magic one. Okay. So that's really cool, Maurice. Thanks so much for sharing those facts. I know that you've been your experience early on. The last time we had an entire conversation was in the beginning of the pandemic, where you shared that your school had already been doing a lot around technology, and you're one of the few leaders actually that we interviewed early on in the pandemic that said the transition was more seamless than most because of all that you had already done around that. Just really briefly give us a little bit of a high level overview of what that has or experience, how this has been leading for you. And then for the folks who are going to be watching this, I know they're all also looking forward to the case study, so we'll jump into that as well. But just give us a little bit of context on your school community, your experience.
Yeah, so the last time we had in-person school was March 13th, 2020,
Mm.
right? So when you think about that, we're almost, exactly 11 months, almost 12 months, from the day everything shut down. And I think for us, Milwaukee Excellence is a school that uses technology every day. Like we're one-to-one. Our teachers are very savvy with Google Classroom and different platforms, and so we were able to get kids online in 2 days back in March. But I have to tell you, it's been sort of a roller coaster since then. Like it's one thing when mentally you're preparing for like a temporary virtual setting, which is what I think a lot of us thought. So I sort of thought, okay, so maybe we won't go back to school this year, but next year we'll definitely be back in school. And now that we've come back and we've come back full virtual, I think what's starting to set in is that one, while we may be good at this on the technology side, the mental health side, the social emotional
Mm.
side, those are the things that we're seeing creep in, not only for our students, but for our families and for our teachers. How do we continue to manage ourselves and find balance where nothing has gone back to normal yet?
Yeah, that's real, which really brings us also to talking about this case study today. I know a lot of the conversations for schools right now and school leaders and school communities is the trauma that teachers are experiencing and also students. Obviously, they're at the center of the work, right? They're our main client, but then we haven't really spoke a lot about our parents and our parental community. And there's a lot of that's coming out a lot. And so, this case study, I just want to read it for us for anyone who has not seen the case study. This is from a principal. So, if you are a school leader or district leader, if you're an educator and you have a case study and you want to submit it, we go through these case studies. These are all real experiences, and we select one that we believe could really speak to what other leaders and other communities are going through. So here's the case study. I'm going to read it really briefly from a principal. I lead a Title I school, and many of our parents must work to keep their lights on. Some have lost their jobs, while others have had to go into work with little to no childcare at home. Students are at home taking care of their siblings during the day. Our district has not approved any in person supports for our families that need it most. Our teachers are doing their best to teach and engage students, but there has to be a better way. To add to the challenges, parents have expressed extreme stress and trauma for themselves during this time. I also want to find ways to support our parental community. Any advice? Okay, so that's real. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that, Maurice?
Yeah, when you said that to me, like my heart like dropped a little bit. I was like I know that I don't know. It took me to like an emotional place because I felt that weight before, and I've asked myself that question many times. And
Yeah.
so when I first read it, um, I got what I call the little panic button. You know, when you wake up in the middle of the night. and you like remember you're supposed to do something, it's like because you didn't write it down or you didn't put it in your planner. That's a feeling
Yes.
like that when you're on the roller coaster. Like it's that
Mm.
that stomach feeling. And so when I think about this, like this is a tough question, and it's one where I hate to tell people this because I think when people get into school leadership, it's because they want to serve,
Yep.
they want to
Yep.
help, and education is their vehicle to like improve society.
Yeah.
But I think with this global pandemic, this was really one of those situations where you got to put on your own oxygen mask first,
Mm. Powerful.
because I think that if people, school leaders, or so whoever wrote this, if he or she or they are not taking care of themselves, then they can't actually be what they need to be for our families.
Mm.
And so I know when you and I first started talking about this, and I could just share some things that, we've done to sort of answer this question. One is what I've told my staff is that we can't be all things to all people in a global pandemic. And so we have to sort of double down on what is it that we're good at? What is it that we're uniquely positioned to do? And what sort of resources can we give that may not necessarily be from us, but that we know that our parents and our families need. And so, for me, it was really saying like, one, we can provide high quality instruction, via Zoom and via Google Classroom. Number two, we're not going to have kids in school all day from 8 to 4, because many of our students they're in 6th through 12th grade, so some of them are the at home care provider if their family,
Mm-hmm.
if their mom or dad is a frontline worker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Really quick, Maurice, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure some people are, once you go through your points, I'd love to circle back to just that schedule, because I think that that's often a question like, oh, well, what does that look like if your kids aren't in school all day? And knowing that many of them may be the caretaker.
yep. So high quality instruction, um, flexible schedule, and then the last thing is like sharing resources. And so if I go back to the first one, or I think the second one you talked about, that flexible schedule. So our school day would have typically been from 8 to about 3:20. Instead, what we did was we made a school day for students that really just lasts from 8 to 12:15. And then students, instead of having to go to, I think 4 classes that are all, 60 minutes with 30 kids in each, we combine classes. So a teacher's teaching 2 cohorts of 60 students. And
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to have a shorter school day. But within that classroom, we may have 3 additional teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the educational assistants, the additional teachers. So you may have 4 teachers in the class with 60 kids. So people might say 60 kids is too much. Well, we have breakout rooms with 4 different adults in each one of those classrooms. And so
Yeah.
we just really want to work smarter and not longer and harder.
Powerful.
What that
Yeah.
allows us to do is, in the afternoon, students can come to office hours. And so it's not mandatory that they need to come each day, but if there's a kid that needs some one-to-one support, or there's some small groups you want to talk to, we have that time in the afternoon. But part of it is also recognizing that our students are probably in charge for some portion of the day, while mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, auntie, or uncle and auntie are out working. So we wanted to make that change.
That's powerful. Well, I'm sure that that alone is going to spark a lot of thought for a lot of principals and school leaders and heads of schools out there. So I heard you say really focusing in on number one, you mentioned oxygen mask, right? First and
Yeah.
foremost, making sure that the first thing is that you are taking care of yourself, because this is no easy work. And this could very easily spiral out of control in your own life, right? You lose sleep, you're constantly giving, and you lose sight of the needs that you have as a person first. And so that is critical. And I really wholeheartedly believe in that, and I love that you mentioned that. Then you shifted to, all right, what are the things that we do really well as a school? Like, where is it that we are going to focus? And so you mentioned high quality instruction. That's not going to change. You're going to continue to do that. Number two, the flexible scheduling. You felt like you had the capacity and the resources to be able to make that happen. And then number three, the resources part. How do we share resources? I want to bring us, because we're going to dig into more of like the action plan and like what we should, the considerations we should be making during this time. Before we continue to go there, and you actually have some things around sharing resources and how you take steps in sharing resources. But first and foremost is listening, right?
Yes.
Positioning yourself as a school leader, as a leadership team, socio-emotional supports, all of that, to listen to what the community, what your parent community actually has to say. And if what you are hearing is more so of an isolated, right, thing, or if this is more of like a whole reoccurring, a larger pattern within the school community. And I know that you do this with your school in a few different ways. Can you speak to that?
Definitely. I think we've had to become better listeners. And I think sometimes with, especially with schools like mine, charter schools that are going into areas that have historically not performed well, we think we know what's best. We think we know how to do things the right way. And for someone like myself, it's a community that I grew up in, so I had even more reason to feel the way I did, right? But it's not true. Even my lived experience was different than a lot of what my our families are going through. And so what we did was, with that flexible schedule, we have a point that every staff member is going to make 5 phone calls a day to a family in their advisory or homeroom. And so with that, we're able to take stock of, how's it going? Is there anything you need? You don't have to be shy. Like, we'll take this back to the team and to Mr. Thomas to see what it is that we can do. And, by making those phone calls, we help people who are grieving because they lost family members during the pandemic. We were able to hear when, family members, or, our families had bills that were due, or didn't have enough food, or didn't know who else to turn to. If we had it, we were able to provide it. Now, this is not something that we post on Facebook. Hey, call us if you need anything. It's something that every family knows because we make these phone calls.
Mm.
And then the teachers
Mm-hmm.
bubble it up to the principals, who then ask me, can we do it? And 9 times
Mm-hmm.
out of 10, the answer is probably yes. Because,
Mm-hmm.
and I know this isn't true in everyone's situation, but at least in our situation, because we're not having athletics, because, school is closed, because we're not doing um, dances and proms and all the things that I wish we were doing, we have a surplus of funds that we can then give away baskets of food to people as they need it.
Yeah.
And so our parents don't have to, even think twice about it. When
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic first started and every kid got a computer, I could tell some of the teachers and some of the leaders were, uh-oh, are all those computers going to come back broken? Are all those things going to come back looking a certain way? I said, well, I don't think they will, but if they do, we can afford it. And like, it's the least that we thought that we could do in these times. And I think, for many leaders, you just have to ask yourself, like, one, what are the ways in which you can either provide those supports, or, I mean, in our position, we're able to directly provide them, or just ask yourself, how can we get people in touch with who they need to be in touch with in order to get the support
Yes.
they need?
Wow, that's powerful. And I just love that, you said, like, if we have it, then we want to be able to provide it for our families. You mentioned that positioning yourself, starting with listening, and for you all, it's your teachers, like building into the school schedule. And you briefly spoke about it earlier. Your kids are in class half the day, the remainder of the day. Teachers in particular have office hours. And so it sounds like this is not just about teachers teaching the entire day and then squeezing in 5 phone calls. You actually have been really intentional and strategic about when are they making those phone calls and how many. And so 5 per day for families, which allows you all to also build very deep and profound relationships.
Yeah.
during this time, which is so key. And so it sounds like through that, you've been able to differentiate how you support your families. You mentioned basket food, giving uh, foods or baskets to families, and that is on a case by case kind of approach.
Yep. Yeah, as families, as we hear that they need, we give away. I mean, we've always done it as part of Thanksgiving, but for this year, we just said as people need it, they're gonna get it. And so,
That's dope.
it doesn't have to happen just once. Like there are a
Yep.
few families who kind of take us up on that offer every month, and that's okay.
Yay! All that magic happening over there. All right. So, something else that I thought about when it comes to sharing resources, right? You mentioned grieving, like the trauma that families are that comes from as a result of loss, losing family members, losing loved ones, and so your teachers often being the ones at the front on those front lines receiving that information. Is there anything that you all have done in terms of like partnering with some healthcare or like business partners in the community to help that? Have your teachers expressed anything around that?
Yeah, we haven't necessarily. I think the biggest thing for us is just to be there. I
Yeah.
ran into one of our parents, and when she saw me, because I hadn't seen her in person, we were in the grocery store. She ran up to me and hugged me. Uh,
Oh.
you know, in the back of my mind, I was like, "We're not supposed to do that," but it's. I loved it. It was
She was
great.
just so happy to see you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Um,
kudos to you for
yeah,
that.
but wait, the thing is, what she told me was that after her mother passed away, like during the pandemic, um, and she said, "I got a phone call from somebody on your team every day,"
Wow.
and I think that's what made her break down and cry. Is just that we were there. Now we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
all the answers. Like we can't. Nothing can take that pain away from
Yeah.
losing your mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing we could be there, we could be there, and we could be consistent. And so that's what was built into our program was being there and being consistent.
Wow, I love that, Maurice. And people, your leadership and how you serve other people is really revealed in a time of crisis, right? In a time where you don't really have all the answers. Is that a cat, Maurice, or a
Yeah,
dog?
it is. It is a cat. It's a cat.
I didn't know you had a cat. I didn't know you were a cat person.
I'm not. I'm not. My wife is. It's just,
There you go. Well, whatever the wife wants.
yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, like I just love consistent being present. One thing that I thought of, and again, like there is no one right answer here. It sounds like you have mobilized your teachers to really be on the front lines. Something that I know has helped a lot of schools right now is just like one, understanding we don't have all the resources internally and we can't be everything to everyone, which is what you were speaking about. We can also tap in, right? Like now is also the time to tap into the to community churches, to healthcare facilities, to business owners who want to serve, they don't necessarily always know how. And part of that listening, I think, is also also considering like focus groups, right? With knowing like, hey, here are the consistent patterns that are coming from our parents, and then how can we all partner to like make this happen for our parents and our students. And part of this is like parents not having childcare at home, or kids not having to take care of their child while they're also needing to be on Zoom themselves. I mean, of
Yeah.
their siblings while they're having to be on Zoom themselves. Some of the advice that has come up as we posted this case study across our social media platforms is looking for volunteers, right? Tapping into these different partners, the ecosystem of a school, because
Yeah.
more than likely there are people who are willing, who are just waiting to be able to help in some way and in some capacity, particularly when it is your immediate community. And so I just want us to also think about that as well. Like who, and if you don't have the capacity as a leader, is there someone, your school counselor or your parent liaison who can begin to kind of compile a list of some healthcare facilities if it is at your parents, and sometimes in some cases your teachers, right? They're the front lines
Mhm.
And they're hearing about all the trauma plus experiencing and going through all the different changes in their own families that we it's something to also think about and consider. I don't know that everyone is always speaking about it, but it's something
Yeah.
that many people are going through.
No, I completely agree. And I think, you know, I think pre-pandemic, when I thought about my network were a lot of people who I've met in education who live and run schools sort of all over the country, right? But I think I really had to get more place-based in what is my network. And so I went and talked to the principal at the elementary school down the street. I talked to the principal of the high school
Mm.
Catholic school down the street. And, one of them told me, like, hey, did you know there's a mobile van to get COVID shots?
Oh.
And so, it's one of the things that we want to start doing is telling our elderly parents and grandparents of our families, like, hey, there's this mobile COVID shot van that you can go to right up the street. It's going to be hosted at another school, so it won't be hosted at our school, but they're allowing our families to come. And so I think
Okay.
that goes back to your point of how are you tapping into those resources? Because if you're a school leader and you're sitting at home by yourself and you're thinking, I'm going to solve the pandemic on my own, like
It's not
you'll
gonna
be fooled.
happen.
There's 7
Yeah.
billion people who haven't figured it out yet either.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you said that, and that's powerful too. How many times do we not speak and to the, if you're middle school, high school, are you talking to your elementary school, to your middle school folks, the high school surrounding it, and there's a lot of power there's in the collective, and
Yes.
so I love that you said that. So we talked about a few things. One is oxygen mask. Two is just being clear on where are you putting most of your resources, what's the position that you are taking during this time, and then doing it consistently, right? And
Yep.
then, so for you, it was instruction, flexible, scheduling, being consistent with that, and then also sharing resources. And it is for you all, it is one on one phone calls consistently to every single family and gathering needs and resources that or what they need that way, and then being able to address their needs on an individual basis, but also using your budget or however whatever other resources you have available to you to serve the communities. You mentioned data, more so qualitatively for you all, but there are also schools out there. If you're a school principal or a leader and you're thinking, hey, you know what, actually I have a really big school community, I don't know how I would make that work with so many students and so many folks. There's also other ways to collect data. Do you have any ideas around that, Maurice?
Yeah, I think continue to survey your families, right? Like I don't uh every kid is probably home with a Chromebook or some sort of technology at this point. So there's really no reason that mom or dad can't click a link and fill out a
Yeah.
survey. And so when we did that, I mean, we were, I think, surprised in some ways. We assumed that at the beginning of the year, everybody was willing and ready to come back to school, but our parents said no. They said they're still nervous. They were scared. They didn't know what was going to
Mm.
happen next. And I think we get in our minds that we know what's best. Oh, parents got to go to work. So we got to get kids back in school. But parents said, my kid's not coming back if I think they're going to get sick or my grandma's going to get sick. And so I
Hmm.
think do the surveys. The other thing is that we did a few, I don't know what you call them other than sort of drive-throughs where we were able to make contact with people at Christmas. We called it Candy Cane Lane. We had people drive through our parking lot and we gave away Christmas gifts,
Mm.
right? We did the same thing at Thanksgiving. We did the same thing for Valentine's Day. We called it the Cupid Shuffle. And these are just
That's
ways
cute.
for us to be able to interact. And then you could ask, how's it going? When that car pulls over, you can be socially distant. We always have on our mask, our families, we told them to wear their mask. And we just say, Mom, how's it going? Now, it was pretty cold in Wisconsin today. So it was pretty cold. We did that, but we had our
Yeah,
hand warming. So you can get data in lots of ways. And kids will be pretty honest too. And so don't
hmm
forget about surveying your students too, to ask them what is it that they need to be
yeah.
successful in this time.
That's powerful. Maurice, thank you so much for, first off, I know you're incredibly busy over there with everything that you have going on. So I just really want to thank you for taking the time. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Mhm.
Perfect. One of my earpieces fell out. But I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us in this conversation. Just know that there are so many leaders out there, so many teachers, and even parents too, who are like, you know what, maybe I'm not the only one. I'm not the
Yeah.
only one, and it's okay for me to actually speak up and say something and ask my school community for it. And so, just thank you so much for just showing up authentically as you always do to share your
No,
experience.
no, Amy. Thank you. Thank the Pavone firm. This is amazing, and I can see all the work that you're doing. And so, thank you for being that connector for all the different school communities because we need people like you too. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Maurice, just let us know really quick before we go. Where can we find you? Where can we follow your school and the amazing work that you all are doing?
Yeah, if you want to find Milwaukee Excellence on all platforms, we're at MKE Excellence. So that's MKE, like Milwaukee Excellence spelled out. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Instagram in Mo. So just Instagram in Mo. But then on all other platforms, it's just Maurice underscore Thomas on Twitter and Maurice L. Thomas on Facebook.
Love it. Love it. Make sure you all go follow him. He is doing incredible work in his school community. There's a reason why they won this school recognition award. Only top two in the entire state. That is huge. So make sure that you follow the work that they're doing. For all of you who have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Pavone Firm. And then go share this video if you felt that this was helpful, if you feel like it would bless other leaders, other communities, your community, please go ahead and share. We will see you on Friday at 4 p.m. for our next YouTube live leadership chat. MauriceYou'reTheBomb.com. Thank
Thank
you.
you. It's my
And
pleasure.
in,
Thank you.
and stay safe and warm out there. All right. Hold on, I'm going to end the show right now.